Assalamu alaikum. I'm Mansoor Ahmad Hashmi. First of all, an apology that my topic is not directly as per se for the related to water reservoirs, but at the end user as we use water eventually for crop production. I had given my suggestion that I can speak on this topic, and I guess I should thank the organizers that they allowed it. And there is a connection which you'll see at the end. Why I thought that I should speak on this, it's a very recent study which was done as an individual consultant by myself and an international Dr. Pathapo. He's a familiar name here. And it brings out the water balance vis-a-vis crop production, vis-a-vis water supply, particularly the groundwater, and eventually like the reservoirs supply the canal water, and they also recharge the groundwater aquifer, which is the main source of water supply. So I thought that this would be appropriate in this type of seminar, so the organizers allowed it. So next please. Okay. So the background to this study was that Punjab water policy, which I happened to write and eventually it got approved. And I can see Mr. Ahmad, he was chief IRI and he commissioned it. It was finally approved in 2018. And it set the goals, what to be achieved as far as water policy for the province is concerned. So under water use and allocation, following steps were recommended: to assess water requirements for different sectors and assign priority for domestic. It has the highest priority: livestock, agriculture, industry, environment, forestry, and recreation. So that's the order of priority. Gradually shift to volumetric water supply, reassess water allocation in different canal commands and reallocate water. And that is what is very important, because our rules and regulations do not permit reallocation of water. Enforce measures to reduce, reuse, and recycle, the 3R acronym which is used. Now, based on this approval of Punjab water policy in 2018, Water Act 2019 was enacted by the Punjab Assembly, and it created two bodies: the Water Resource Commission and the Water Services Regulatory Authority, WRFH. Water Resource Commission is to be headed by the Chief Minister, and all the heads of the department are the members. Secretary Irrigation is the secretary of the commission. And basically, the Chief Minister has the authority to reallocate water for various canal commands. And Water Services Regulatory Authority particularly relates to the regulation of groundwater for bulk users. The private tube wells have been left out for the meantime, but eventually I think they'll come on board. So as a result of this, Asian Development Bank sponsored a water reallocation study through individual and international consultant. I was the national consultant, to assess demand supply in each canal command and recommend policy for reallocation. So that's what the study is about. So that's the role of Water Resource Commission and WSRA. So the approach, it was probably, as I realized, a huge data crunching undertaking to do it for the all 26 canal commands of Punjab province. So 3-year data, 2015-16, 16-17, 17-18, crop data for 26 canal commands were used to estimate crop water requirements for Kharif and Rabi periods. Canal diversions and effective rainfall was estimated as the total water supply for crop production. Surplus deficit in each canal command was determined. Then this was correlated to total and net groundwater abstraction was determined for each canal command. And then this was tied up with the piezometer data of about 826 observation wells out of the 3,000 data that existed at that time, was used to determine fall rise in each canal command. So that was the overall approach and methodology. So that was the water balance model. Since data had to be pulled up from various sources, So why the 3 years were selected was basically the crop reporting service publishes the crop data for each district. Uh, so the is the pointer. Where's the pointer? Okay. So this is published, and the latest year when the study was being done was the 2017-18. So that's why those data was used. But the data published is district-wise, and that creates a problem. It had to be converted into canal command, and this was done through GIS overlays with the overlay of the district boundaries with the canal command boundaries. And then we got the canal-wise crop data. The weather data for the calculation of evapotranspiration, since we were using the whole Punjab province, there were 48 weather stations, and we needed all these parameters. It was quite expensive. Now everybody is selling the data, so not possible within this small study to buy this data from PMD. So international weather data set from weatheronline.uk was used. Some data checks were made to see that, to check its accuracy. And using their data, the Penn-Monteith on FAO 56 method commonly used was estimated as ETO. An FAO and PARC study was used to develop the KC crop coefficients. So here we get the actual crop water demand. So that was done for all the 26 canal commands. This is the demand side. The water supply, again, SUPACO data set was used to get the monthly rainfall data from SUPACO. It was available on the website. So, and that was used. The FAO manual method based on USDA approach was used to compute effective rainfall. Punjab Irrigation Department data was used for canal diversion. So that gave us the total water supply, which was basically the canal supplies plus effective rainfall. And there we calculated the surplus and deficit. Now, in case there was deficit, it was assumed that this is the groundwater extraction requirement. So there are two methods were used. What if the no losses are assumed so that there is total water supply, and then what is the groundwater extraction required, which basically indicates mining of the aquifer, or when the losses were assumed from the canal system and others and field application losses, then what is the total groundwater extraction from the aquifer? So these were the two approaches used. So these are the results. The district-wise crop data you can see for each district for Kharif and Rabi season. And the data is in acres. A few I would like to point out. If you look at the total sum, for the year 2016, 36 million acre was the crop data. It reduced to 34 million in the next year, and again 34 million 469 acres in year 2017 and 18. So that is taking into account the increased crop production due to the tube well revolution. We have about 1.2 million private tube wells now. And many areas outside the canal command areas are also being cropped, which I will come to that point later, because we saw that the cropping intensity was more than 200% in some cases. And there was a discussion in the irrigation department that the water allowance is based on the CCAs and not on cropped area. So we're using the satellite imagery. We had to identify which areas are outside the command area, and proportionally the crop area was reduced to determine this. So this is to just explain how the uh, conversion was done. Sorry. this slide. Go back. So, for example, if you look at the point I mentioned earlier, if you look at the Bahawalnagar district, there are two canal commands here: Fodwa Canal, which covers 29% of the area, and Sadkia Canal, which covers 71% of the area. So, the crop data of the district was proportionally divided to these canal commands in this ratio. Similarly, it was done for all. The thing I mentioned about cropping intensity, if you look at LBDC at number 3 serial, the CCA is 1.33 million acres. The Kharif crop area was 1.4 and the Rabi was 1.8. We'll see very high numbers for Rabi season despite the fact that we have lower water supply. That is because of the wheat production. So private farmers, tube farmers are being extensively used in the cropping of wheat area. And you see that's why we have a cropping intensity of 244%. So this was once we looked at the LBDC area, there was a lot of non-command outside CC area. So this was adjusted because of the requirement. We can't reallocate water for this extra crop area, but the one that which is within the CCA. This is for all the canal commands of one particular year. This is what I was explaining. If you look at the CBDC, this is the Lahore district. The white boundaries are the district boundaries for which we have the crop data. And in the yellow, you see the canal command areas. And you see the areas outside the canal command which are cropped as seen from the satellite imagery. So that's how adjustment was made in the cropped area. This is the weather station data. We published it. There's a whole appendix about 250 pages. Anybody can check, students who want to research whether how appropriate it is to use online weather data if the local data set is not available. And we compared it to the PMD's 30-year climatic normals, which is published, to see if the data is within the range. On these graphs, you would see there was a very similar study done by IMI in 93 and 94. And we used it as a reference to see the results that we are getting, how they correlate to it. And you see that the IMI results, there's a visible difference of the temperatures. Now, whether that is due to climate change, the yellow extreme right line and the in all the months that you see. So because of this, if these increase in temperatures is due to climatic change, then it would result in increased crop water demand. So that's the standard equation, Penman-Monteith, FAO 56. These are the monthly ETOs for the districts. And again, a transition had to be made. We used the weather station in each canal command area, the closest one. Or if there were two, then by Thiessen polygon method, assigned areas to each weather station. So the idea was to use maximum number of stations. This is the map used where the crop coefficients were derived from. This was an FAO and PRC study. These are the crop coefficients used month-wise. The time step was monthly. And this is canal-wise ETO month-wise for each canal. So here you can see that total for Rabi is 531 millimeter for Sadkia, and for Kharif, because of higher temperatures, it's almost twice, 1270. That you can see. Once multiplied with the crop coefficient, you get the actual crop water requirement. And in this table, you can see annual, and again, 959, 945, I think the World Bank study indicates an average of 970 millimeters as the ETC for Canal Command. So these results are, comparable. So in terms of volume, how much water requirement is there for each canal command for Rabi? And we look at the end figure. So 70.59 million acre feet is the crop water demand. And this compares quite, it's quite high compared to the 93, 94 EME study, which was about 53 million acre feet. So a jump of about 17 million acre feet in the crop water demand from the 93, 94 to say 2017-18 period. And again, this is explainable due to increased wheat production. If you look at the wheat production figures, I think in the 90s, there were 17 or 18 million total wheat production, which kept on rising. And I think this year we had about 27.2 million tons of wheat production. So that's the, and that affects, when we are talking about reservoirs and the water supply, we should see that how much demand has increased, at the downstream end. This is for various canal commands for the 3 years. So the second, the water supply side is the rainfall distribution, as I explained earlier, and let's see what figure we get. This is the KC value. So the effective rainfall, sorry, so if you see the figure at the bottom, 13.39 million acre feet, that is the effective rainfall contribution. This appears to be slightly higher, but if you look at the other years, this was a wet year period. It is reduced in the next year to 10.53 MAF. 9.5 is, I think, reported by other researchers. And in a dry year, which was 2016-17, it reduces to 8.67 effective rainfall, which is contributing to the water supply. Canal diversion, this was just converting the canal diversion data of the irrigation department into volume. And here you see that 2015-16, we had a diversion of 49.41 acre feet, million acre feet. In next year, 52.32, and in the third year, 48.97. So we took out about 4.1% as non-beneficial use. So the net water supply for the canal command area was 47.38, 50, and 46.96. So what is the water balance? How much is the surplus or deficit for each canal command? You see, we are not taking from in this any losses because we want to find out how much mining is taking place. So this was 10.69 million acre feet, which was additional water required to meet the crop water demand. For this year, for the next year, it was 8.7. For the third year, it was 16.12. This was the dry year. So that explains 2016-17 was the dry year. So this much water has to come from, the mining the aquifer, because we are taking total recharge into account by not taking any seepage losses. Now, in order to find out how much groundwater extraction is required, like the pumpage, then you assume losses. These figures again were taken from irrigation. 16.75% canal and distribution losses, 20% water course losses, 25% field application losses, total of about 61.5. And if you minus that, then the total pumpage required, and these figures are not familiar that you see in the literature, that the groundwater extraction, this was 38.63 required in this year. In the next year, again 38.46. And in the dry year, you can see that we are going up to 43.98. And basically, like this is the groundwater required to meet the crop water requirements. Basically, the pumpage requirement would be higher than this. So those figures that we are pumping 60 million acre feet of water, or the pumping capacity from the aquifer is 60, is verified by these figures. Okay, yeah, so compared with, I mentioned earlier, like for the, if you see at the bottom in 93, 94, ME was saying that it was 53 million acre feet, and now we have the figures of 70 on this. So I'll quickly, now this was the one part, but how much actually is the groundwater, what is the status of the groundwater as an aquifer? I'll quickly go through this. It's a separate presentation. Um, how this study was done, and it was a new method invented by Dr. Prathapar, which he's using. See, groundwater levels decline during withdrawals and are replenished during monsoon. If withdrawals exceed recharge, then groundwater levels decline and vice versa. Annual withdrawals vary depending on climate. Climate of consecutive years are not similar. Hence, we would like to have aquifers releasing more water in dry years. In summary, that was the methodology. If post monsoon groundwater levels, only the post monsoon, are steady over a number of years, and the period was defined as almost 12 years of data, we will consider groundwater use as sustainable, that it is depleted in pre-monsoon and recovered, and over a long period, if the recovery is significant, then we are saying that it is not declining, or the decline is not significant. So we use the DLR data. I mentioned about 846 regressions and a significance test. If those of you who still remember your statistics, it's the P test. Two confidence levels, 90 and 95% were used. This was a lot of data cleaning had to be done. There were missing years in blue. You can see the missing years. They were simply interpolated from the preceding and the next year. And the yellows are missing values. So the well location, piezometer locations were seen, and the nearest neighbor of piezometer was used to adjust the. So a lot of data had to be added because the data set had to be complete for 12 years. This is a specific yield map. These are the water levels, from individual bores. So all are plotted for each canal command. And this is the regression result. So here, the p-value, the lower the p-value, the more significant the decline. And for example, here you are seeing a p-value of 0.85. And for Fordbach Canal, in fact, it's a flat line, which means, in fact, it shows that there is a rise in water table here. Whereas in Sadhya Canal, there is a decline, but it is not significant. In CBDC, which is Lahore region, Lower Bari Doab and others, the value of 0.0002, that shows that the decline is significant. So these were the results. These are the rise and falls of various groundwater levels. These are the p-values. Of course, if these were the maps, and you can see the piezometer locations. So they are not ideal. Like in Panjnath, the piezometers were on the top of the Panjnath Canal command. So may not be representative, but that's the data you have. So, okay, this is data. Again, the study was used to find out the hot spots, like the areas which require recharge. Again, the P test was used, that where the decline is significant, those specific areas with coordinates were identified. So if you have a recharge program, the areas are identified. Another, just one slide, gray satellite was also used to confirm piezometer data, and the results correlated with each other. So in fact, now gray satellite is a very good tool. I would recommend the students to learn how to use it. In fact, Dr. Pathapar had to engage one of his students and do this analysis for us because I was unable to find any student who would do the gray satellite. But this is from NASA and it measures the gravity of the mass of Earth. And if there is a decline, that is reflected in the groundwater level. So that's the basic science behind it. So these are the end summary results. So sorry you heard.
If somebody has two questions, they can ask.
Okay.
आपने जो डाटा था ये स्टैटिक है जो आपने ईटी का निकाला है या हम रियल टाइम में ले सकते हैं?
Yes, crop data, with the digital satellite imagery and it is improving. It is not yet there yet because I think digital classification, either the pixel size, I think we did a project WRMIS. So the pixel size we were getting was 16 acres. So that was a course. So, but there are more satellites coming up, I guess, which can provide, you can do crop classification. And another method could be that each patwari, everything is online. He can look at his Khasra map and click and enter the Gitavari online. So you will have crop data instantly, after the crop. So these are the two methods that you can include, improve this crop reporting service. And of course, this is how you can yearly calculate how much water or crop data you are using.
I will encourage students to participate in their questions. सवाल है मोबाइल का ये लोग बार-बार यहाँ नहीं आते.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your valuable knowledge.